Alien Earth. I just saw season 1, episode 1. So many thoughts. I wonder what the discourse has been. I haven't watched any other reviews or anything. Off the bat, I thought it was really good. The tone is very much the same universe of the original first 2 films, and I've always wondered what Earth was like then. And now that I see it, it fits and feels so right. The tone is great. From the start, they start mentioning the distinction between cyborgs, synths, and now hybrids, and there's the race for immortality between different corporations. There's corporate politics, which is a theme in a lot of the Alien movies, and then also very familiar themes with other Ridley Scott stuff like Blade Runner, an Alien franchise, and Raised by Wolves. They all seem somehow connected. It's very fascinating. I think in the beginning they mentioned there being other corporations, new ones, and then one of these new corporations is Prodigy, which is run by some very young kid. In fact, his name is like Boy Cavalier or something like that. They introduced the idea of hybrids. He has his own city, and you see Earth, it's got some of the same technology that you have seen in the first 2 films. Like I said, the tone is very much of those films, like the films very international. The styling, some of them dressed and looked like they were from late 70s, and there's some prejudice towards people who weren't actually humans but seemed human, whether it's cyborgs, synthetics, or now hybrids. The way they started out, the pace, and you just didn't know where it was going. It was very fascinating. Once you started seeing it go along, you're like, where is this gonna go? What happens? Spoiler alert here. I can't remember what the other corporations are, but it makes me think about the Tyrell Corporation. Is that one of them? Which is the replicants, who were synthetics, which I wonder if this were a connected world with Blade Runner, if that's the future of this world in which the current synths are now very old and starting to show signs of decay or whatever. That'd be interesting if that's how that kind of fits into this world, if it does at all. One thing I want to mention is their portrayal of cyborgs was pretty cool because it showed their synthetics through some translucent synthetic skin, and it was different than what you would expect a cyborg to look like. There's just so much to discuss about the idea of having these hybrids, which are synthetic bodies but with downloaded human consciousness, the morality of all that, all the discourse that could come out of that, because these bodies don't grow. They only so far are using children to do these transplants because of their body or their mind's flexibility. They're able to handle it versus adults, maybe not so much. And so they have a mind of a child, but they put them in the bodies of adults since they can't actually grow. These synthetic bodies also don't produce hormones, so they're emotionally stunted. They're not human, even though they have the mind of a human. So then, there's a question of, do they have a soul? How is it being transferred? Is it all just data? But then, even though there's no hormones and supposedly no emotions, I guess the lead hybrid, Wendy, she seems to be developing something that makes her very human-like, which is some kind of attachment to, spoiler alert, her brother, who she's been made to not have any contact with because she is supposedly dead. He doesn't know that she's still alive. They don't consider her human, but they're like, what is she? So then there'll be this whole exploration of what human is, and her exploring whether or not she is human, or maybe trying to be more human. And also, her name's Wendy, playing off the whole Peter Pan and Lost Boys. Other children like her who have been transferred to these new bodies will never grow old, like the Lost Boys. And they're like, Wendy, darling. And then if you look at the name tabs of one of the kids before they're transferred, it says Smee on it. They end up calling the group of these kids the Lost Boys. And I wondered, with all these familiar themes that we see with other Ridley Scott properties, if he was involved. I kind of thought that he wasn't, and I remember hearing he had wanted the Alien franchise to be more akin to Star Wars, building out this big universe with this huge mythology, and that he felt the handlers of the franchise did not go that route or messed it up or something like that. And I see him as an executive producer on this, so then maybe he's involved, because it definitely feels like his handprint is on on there. If not, they're trying to at least develop it as if it were, and it works. I like it. The writer and director of this first episode, at least, it seems like the person who developed it is Noah Hawley. So I'm wondering, who is this Noah Hawley? Because I thought he did a really good job. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the other episodes. I wonder how many there are and if they have a whole timeline of how this fits into the rest of the universe. If it does, I imagine it does. I did hear that it's somehow adjacent to Romulus and around the time of Alien 2 or Aliens, which is interesting. The timeline seems correct, but you wonder, even though the alien never made it to Earth in those movies, now we're seeing that it somehow has. So there's this parallel. He must have had a lot of ships doing research up there, and one of them made it back. But then it makes me wonder if the other sequels are not considered canon. What is it, Alien Resurrection, where Earth is somehow mentioned or somehow connected in that movie, I think, because then they have that synth droid Call, who was from Earth or something like that. And if that were the case, they would have known that they've had these alien species or alien specimens before. Unless this shows to show you how it was all buried and hidden, because in this first episode, the cyborg who's working for Weyland is securing the ship and its cargo, so anybody else who comes on board, like the people from Prodigy or whatever, are eliminated until Weyland comes along, which we haven't seen yet. But maybe what happens is that it gets all covered up, so no one on Earth knows about it except for Weyland. And then, which leads to more in Aliens, and then maybe even in the future of Prometheus, where Weyland eventually goes up to space to meet with one of those, what are they called? The makers or creators or whatever they're called. Anyways, I'm really curious where this series is going and how far they have planned. So I thought it was great. What'd you guys think?